All right, this is Math 209, Week 2, Section 6.6. We're solving applications using all those quadratic formulas. So our question here says the height of h in feet of a ball after t seconds is given by this ugly formula. How long did it take for the ball to hit the ground? So what does that mean? Well, basically what it means is you've got the ground. Now here is your height, right? H-E-I-G-H-T, height, okay? And so somebody throws up a ball, and that ball goes up, and then it comes down. So if you think about it, that ball is going to hit the ground twice, kind of like. One is sort of physically impossible. That's where you're standing right here, and you throw the ball up. Right? And then it reaches the top and then it comes down and crashes down here. So technically, the ball is going to hit the ground twice. That's why we have an exponent of a 2. So how long did it take for it to hit the ground? So the idea is what we're going to do is we know we've got our formula. H is equal to 128t minus 16t squared. And when the ball hits the ground, that means h is 0. So really, this becomes 0 is equal to 128t minus 16t squared. And I'm going to rewrite it a little bit. I'm going to put it over, well, yeah, I'm going to switch it around on that equal sign because I like the 0 on the right. And this is what we've been solving in the previous videos this week. And so how do we solve this equation? Well, the first thing we do is we factor out a common term, and our common term is 8t. So 128 divided by 8 is, let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16. So that's going to be 16 minus, and then if we... Oh, wait, you know what? I see a better one. We can factor out, we can factor out a 16t. Because when we factor out 16t, we end up with 8 minus t right here. So how did I get that? Well, I know that 16 times 8 is 128. So that's how I'm factoring out. We have a t in both terms, so that's why I'm factoring out the t. And I can factor out a 16. So 16 times 8 is 128. 16 times 1 is 16. So there's our terms. So we have either 16t is equal to 0, or we have 8 minus t is equal to 0. So now we have some division, or some algebra, to work out. So in both cases, we're on this side, we're going to divide both sides by 16. The 16s cancel. So you end up with t is equal to 0. And then, or, over here, I want to get the t all by itself, so I'm going to add both sides by t. So the t's cancel, so I end up with 8 is equal to t, also known as t is equal to 8. So here are our 2 times. So what does this mean? Well, the ball is going to hit the ground either at t equals 0, meaning 0 seconds, or t equals 8, meaning 8 seconds. So if you go back up here, this is at 0 seconds because the ball hasn't even left the ground. And then right here is at 8 seconds because it took 8 seconds for the ball to go up and come down. All right, so on this one, you've got those classic t-shirt cannon kind of things. So here is your height right here. And when that t-shirt is fired, it's fired from the ground, and that t-shirt goes up, and then it comes down, right? But the question here is, we want to know, when does that t-shirt reach 70 feet? So we're going to call it 70 feet. So it's going to reach 70 feet twice. Once as it's going up, and then once again as it's coming down. All right, so our formula is right here, and so we want to know when does this formula equal 70 feet. All right, because that's what they're saying. We want to know when does this formula equal 70 feet. So I use the formula and I set it equal to 70. And the way we solve this equation, we need it to equal 0. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 70. And so we end up with negative 15t squared plus 75t minus 60 equals 0. And so now I have a common factor of 15. 15 times 1, 15 times 5, and 15 times 4. But I'm going to make it a negative 15. So that gives me t squared minus 5t plus 4 equals 0. So you catch that the signs changed because I'm actually factoring out a negative 15. And so now nothing for us to do with the negative 15, but this guy, we can use the box. And we're going to use that box, and we've got t squared here, and we've got a positive 4 here. And since we want these two middle terms to equal negative 5, I know, so we're going to start with t and t, so that's how you get t squared. And I'm going to use 4 and 1, and that gives me 4t and 1t. But I want these two internal terms to equal negative 5t. So that means I want both of them to be negative, which means both of these are going to be negative. So we end up with negative 15 times t minus 1 times t minus 4, and that equals 0. So here's the t minus 1, here's the t minus 4. So we've got three numbers being multiplied by each other to equal 0. So that tells us either t minus 1 is equal to 0 or t minus 4 is equal to 0. So solving using algebra to solve, so we're going to add 1 to both sides. The 1's cancel. So you get t is equal to, t is equal to 1. And then over here, we're going to add 4 to both sides. The 4's cancel, so you end up with t is equal to 4. So what does that mean? That's 1 second and 4 seconds. So when we go up here, so it reaches 70 feet at 1 second, and it reaches 70 feet at 4 seconds. So there are your two answers, and it says to separate it with a comma. All right, so this is actually multiple parts, but my screenshot only has the first part, but I know what the extra parts are. So it says you've got a braking distance in feet and given by this formula. So the D stands for the distance that it takes you to stop the car if you're traveling at a certain speed, x. All right, x miles per hour. So calculate the braking distance for 20 miles per hour and 70 miles per hour. So section A means we're going to do D equals 1 over 16 x squared. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace the x with a 20. And so that becomes D is equal to 1/16 times 20 squared. So D is equal to 1/16 times 400. So D is equal to, and now I'm going to just use my calculator, my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to type in 400 divided by 16, because that's what that is. So 400 divided by 16 gives me 25. So that part is 25 miles per hour. And then the other one, d is equal to 1/16 x squared. So d is equal to 1/16 times 70 squared. So d is equal to 1/16 times 4,900. So d is equal to, and I'm just going to type in 4,900 divided by 16. And let me make sure I did that right. 4,900 divided by 16. Oh my goodness, that equals 306.25. It wants us to round to the nearest tenth. So what we're really going to do is we're going to write down 306.3. And that is our answers for part A. Now part B says, if the distance, the braking distance is 25 feet, let's estimate the speed of the car. So what that means, B, so we know that the distance is equal to 1/16 x squared, and we are told that the distance is 25 feet. So we are told that d is equal to 25, and we need to figure out how to solve for x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides by 16. Why am I doing that? Well, because this 16 in the numerator cancels out with this 16 in the denominator, leaving us with x squared on the right. And then on the left, we're going to do 25 times 16, and that equals 400 on the left. So x is equal to 20. So what does that mean? That's 20 miles per hour. So if we required 25 feet to stop, that means we're probably going right around 20 miles per hour. So question B said to estimate. I didn't estimate, I actually did it, which is C, using a calculator to do it. All right, so do my answers agree? Yeah, of course they agree, because I actually did it. I didn't actually use estimation. All right, so here we have this ugly formula, and that formula tells us, it models the number of car accidents each year. So from 2000 to 2010, the cumulative number of car accidents is given by this formula, where x stands for the year, and 1 equals 2000, 2 equals 2001, 3 equals 2003, 3 equals 2002, sorry, 4 equals 2003, and so you get the idea. So if we want to know how many accidents, the cumulative number of accidents in 2004, so that it means x is equal to 5, all right, and because 1 started with 2000, so 2004 would be 5, all right. So what we're going to do is we are going to take this ugly formula, and wherever you see an x, you're going to replace it with a 5. So this becomes negative 49 times 5 squared plus 1,372 times 5 plus 14,455. All right, so this is really 25. So 25 times 49, 25 times 49 is 1,225, but I would need it to be a negative because it was negative 49. Now I'm going to multiply here, so that's going to be 1,372 times 5, and that gives me 6,860, plus there's nothing to do over here, so I'm just going to copy it down. So we've got these positives, and then this negative. So I'm going to add these together and then subtract this. So I'm going to add those. And so when I do that, this equals some ugly number, 21,315. Now I'm going to take this number and subtract 1,225. I'm pretending it's a positive, right? And then I end up with C is equal to 20,090 people. Ugh. And that's how many cumulative car deaths. Car deaths or car accidents? Car accidents. All right. So now it says, use a table of values to estimate the year in which the cumulative number of car accidents reached is 18,100. Now, what does that mean? So that means what we're going to do is we're going to go over here, and I'm going to paste in that formula. There it is. There's the formula. And I'm going to use the number 1, so for x equal 1, and then I'm going to figure out the value of that formula, and then I'm going to do x equals 2, and I'm going to paste in that formula, and I'm going to replace the x with 2, and then I'm going to do x equals 3, and I'm going to paste in that value, and I'm just going to keep going and going and going and going and doing a lot of work until I finally get an answer that is really close to 18,100. And that's the idea for that one. A classic problem. It says the length of a rectangular banner is 6 feet longer than its width. If the area is 72, find the dimensions. So you've got the length and the width, and we know that if this is the width, the length is the width plus 6, and that we know when we multiply width times width plus 6, we're supposed to get 72. A couple of ideas. One idea is just use guess and check, because the numbers are so stinking small. Just start guessing. What do you think W is? I don't know, 5. Okay, then 5 times 11 is, well, 5 times 11 is 55, not 72. So we know width cannot be 5. Let's try 6. Oh, well, if this is 6, this is 12. Oh, gee whiz, I already did it. If this is 6, that makes this 12, because 6 plus 6 is 12. And look at this, 6 times 12 equals 72. We're done. So the width is 6 and the length is 12. Now, if you really needed to do the algebra, we would have had width times width plus 6, and we want that answer to equal 72. So using the distributive property, you get w squared plus 6w equals 72. Now, if we're going to factor, we need this side to be 0. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 72. And the 72's cancel. So we end up with w squared plus 6w minus 72 equals 0. All right, so now that we have our little equation right here, we're going to use the box method. And we know that w squared goes there. We know negative 72 goes there. Now thinking about our 72, how do you get 72? Well, that's 1 times 72. That's 2 times 36. That's 3 times, 3 times, let's see, 24. Boy, I'm having a hard time writing here. 3 times 24, that's 4 times, let's see, 4 times 18. That's 6 times 12. 7, 8, and that's 8 times 9. All right, so we've got all of these choices, but we can see that since we want our internal term, so we know over here, we know this is going to be w times w. That's how you get w squared. Now it's this part that we're a little confused about, right? So we know the internal terms needs to be 6. So the only option in which these two guys being multiplied can possibly give us a 6 is this one. And that's if we subtract them, we would get 6. So that means we need to use 6 and 12. And I don't know where it goes, so I'm just going to guess the 6 there and the 12 there. We might have to reverse it. And sure enough, 6 times 12 gives us 72. Right now we're ignoring the signs. So that gives us 6w, that gives us 12w. But we want the answer to be a positive 6w. So if we want these two guys to equal positive 6w, that means this has to be positive 12, that has to be a negative 6, making that a negative 6, making this a positive 12. And sure enough, by the way, positive 12 times negative 6 gives us negative 72. So that is our factor. So we've got w plus 12 times w minus 6 equals 0. So one of these has to equal 0. So w plus 12 equals 0, or w minus 6 equals 0. Now we're going to use algebra. Let's do this one. We're going to subtract 12 from both sides. The 12s cancel, so you get w is equal to negative 12. Or over here, we're going to add 6 to both sides. The 6's cancel, so w is equal to 6. Now what the heck does w stand for? Remember that? W stands for the width of our rectangle. Well, can the width of a rectangle ever be negative? No, that doesn't make sense. So we know it can't be negative 12, so the only possible correct answer is 6, but we knew that just by guessing and checking over here.